I grew up with the Washington Post newspaper. And in the classified ad section, it was divided into male, white female, male, colored female. And you could tell the difference in the jobs. Okay, white males were executives, managers, salespeople, all of that. White folk or black males tended to be jobs that were physical in nature. Black women, it was usually jobs involving cleaning, doing laundry, domestic type work. Okay. And this was perfectly legal to do. This is what Jim Crow looked like in real life. Okay. It wasn't just a concept, some words. It was when you hire for a job, when people look to see what jobs they can take, when they look in the newspaper, which is where you looked for jobs back then, there was no internet. But when you looked in the newspaper classified ad, it was divided on the basis of race. Okay. The world was built around that concept. Now, along with that concept came, of course, a certain perception about who these people were. You could just look at what they were, what the jobs were that they were being advertised for to see, oh, I guess this is who does physical labor. I guess this is who's supposed to wash my clothes. I guess this is who's supposed to take care of my children. I guess this is supposed to be who takes, uh, fills, cleans my house. Okay, this is supposed to be who manages my business, these white males. That didn't disappear. Those perceptions people had had in their heads from the founding of the country until the day that law became effective did not disappear. Those ideas were still in people's heads. But now you had a law saying you couldn't discriminate. How do you even know what that looks like? There's never been a society here where that didn't happen. So people were like, do I take down the colored and white signs? Is that what that means? Remember, that's what was in restaurants, it was on public transportation. Is that what they mean by don't discriminate? Because we've never seen this before, so we don't know. So I entered this picture in 1981 when I am asked to create a course that deals with the fact that the person who asked me to do it, who had been head of the Public Employee Relations Commission in New York, its first head of the Public Employee Relations Commission, um, realized that every unfair labor practice action that was brought, when it was handled by the attorneys in the agency, there were two kinds that were always ignored, two kinds of unfair labor practice claims: race and gender. Now, of course, this was a white male asking me, and I say, of course, because at the time, that's who that would be heading up an agency. He retired to Florida, wasn't quite sure, knew he didn't like what he had seen. But once he started teaching as sort of something to do after he retired, he started teaching at the College of Business at the University of North Florida. He started teaching management, but it occurred to him that maybe there could be somebody who could create a course that addressed what it is he had seen happen in New York. He reached out to his old assistant, who was now heading up the Federal Labor Relations Authority, where I was a labor lawyer, and said, do you think there's anybody there that might be interested in doing this? I get called in walking down the hall one day, and the head of the agency, there are three, one of them said, can you see me in my office? And I came to see him, didn't have no idea that he even knew who I was. And one of the things he asked was, would you like to teach? And I'm like, no. And he had also asked me if I wanted to move south, and I said no. Uh, and then it occurred to me I needed to give this man a yes. He was in charge of my check, and I had two young children to feed. Um, but his next question was, would you let me put your resume in with some others that I'm sending from the agency to my old boss, who's now in Florida and wants to create this course? And I said, oh, sure, you can do that. And the rest is history.
Mark Dawkins is a PhD, MBA, MACC, CPA, CMA, and CGMA, and joined the Cotton College of Business at the University of Florida as a Dean and Distinguished Professor for Excellence in June 2015. Well, Mark, you haven't been busy at all. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to another episode of Quilted Hearts Chats, and we have, of course, another wonderful guest to bring to you. My name is Renee Patterson, and I'm here with my aunt, Dawn D. Bennett Alexander. And this is when you say, hi.
Oh, this is when I say, oh, hi, I'm Dawn. And we are here to try to deal with the issue of DEI and providing information about what DEI is. We don't really advocate as much as we provide information to you so that you can make a decision. And the reason we do that is because there has been so much activity with DEI, especially since January 20th, 2025, when the executive order went out essentially trying to kill it. And we realized that so many people did not even know what it was. And that's part of why it could sort of go quietly into that dark night. So our basic question is always with every guest, what does DEI have to do with blank? And we fill in those blanks with guests because of things that we know that people didn't necessarily realize were related to DEI. And as it turns out, they were. And because they are, you realize how much nonsense it is to say that you're getting rid of DEI. Today, we have one of my good buddies, Mark Dawkins, who teaches at the University of North Florida, where I started out my academic career. And Mark teaches in the College of Business there. He's the head of the MACC program, which is the Master's in Accounting. But Mark and I have known each other since I was at the University of North Florida, and he was a student at the University of Florida. And we were both in what was then called the McKnight program that provided a pathway for more Black PhDs to become a part of academia. I was in as a junior faculty member. Mark had received his as a student. Later, he ended up, surprise, surprise, coming to the University of Georgia, where I was teaching in the Terry College of Business, and lo and behold, he became a member of that faculty. So Mark and I have known each other for years. And I think we probably were in the McKnight program like in 84, 85?
84, 85, yes.
Okay, all right.
Started, yeah.
Yeah. And his wife, Janice, was, she worked in the legal affairs at the University of Georgia. They have since gone back, and actually Mark went back to be dean at the University of North Florida College of Business. They are now there. I am now retired. So we have known each other through decades. We were just talking before we came on about his son, Ian, who he actually had while I knew him. There were other kids before, but Ian was a baby. I still have the picture of his announcement. Ian is now a doctor in gerontology and palliative care and doing really well. So we go back a long time. And as a part of that long history with us, Mark was also head of diversity for the College of Business, the Terry College of Business, when he was there. So, of course, we worked really closely together with that, and we're real advocates across the campus, not just for the University of Georgia, but people knew if you needed to do something with diversity, you needed to call me or you needed to call Mark, because we sort of had our fingers in all kinds of pies. But there was also the private side of it as well, things that were happening in my life or in Mark's life, or things that he had heard about that also involved this issue. So it was really deep and broad for us. And I knew that when we decided to have this as a podcast, that Mark would be one of the people that I called on, because I knew how deep that history was with these issues, how passionate he was about those issues, how they've actually changed over the years, and certainly over the past 7 months in dealing with these issues. And I knew he could add a lot to the conversation. So, Mark, that's a big introduction, isn't it?
It's a big introduction. Yes.
And in the middle, before you get ready to go, Mark, I just want to say to our audience, please like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. If you're considering it, and it's free. So if you're considering it, please think of us as your place to get information that is available to give you a deeper understanding of what this journey on DEI is. Okay.
Yes. And Renee, that last part is really so important. And I mentioned this before, but it's really important for us. Y'all, we are not trying to give you misinformation. We're not trying to give you our our version of what this is. We understand that the vast majority of people have heard the most about DEI most recently through a political lens. And we understand that looking at it through that lens is very different than looking at it through the reality of what's been happening over the past 40 to 60 years about it. Because those are people who have an axe to grind. If they know this is a divisive issue for you and you'll vote for them, if they tell you certain things you think they think you want to hear as opposed to information, then they will do that. And we instead want to give you information. How you come out on that information is up to you. But if you're like most people, you understand that your view of the world is your view of the world and it's based on your experience. The more people you have who've had different experiences, the more information you can gather. So we try to bring you people who have had different experiences with this. They share that experience with you. So you now have more upon which to base your decision. If you thought DEI was some program that some liberal dreamed up to put white males out of their jobs, to take them out of their qualified and put unqualified people in, which is the way this is being billed recently, you are so wrong. It's not funny. And we need you to be able to have information that shows you why that's not true. This is a program of longstanding. It did not come out as a government program. It just sort of evolved out of the needs that were there in trying to make real the law that had been passed in 1964. So everybody that we bring you, including Mark, are people who will provide that kind of information for you, not to try to make you, to persuade you of one thing or another, but provide information upon which you can make your own decision about whether you think it makes sense to try to get rid of this. Okay. Right. So, Renee, can I give you the first question?
Without further ado, we have Mark here with us. Thank you so much, Mark, for coming to our show. We hope that you find this a space where you can discuss all things on mortgage lending, which is why you're here. You want to tell us a little bit about
that? Yes. And so I have been involved in, as Don said, I'm a professor of business. My specialty is accounting. And I have been involved in mortgage lending all of my life. When I went to graduate school, Janice and I, my wife, bought our first property. And so we bought a series of properties since then. At the time when we were both students at FSU, she was in the law school and I was in the business school, we were turned down for a loan, in fact. We ultimately got the loan through another lender, but I was involved in a lawsuit against the first lender that turned us down. And so that experience led me to do research in the area of mortgage lending. And I published several articles in the space that relate to mortgage lending and discrimination in mortgage lending.
Mm-hmm. Mark, tell the audience why it is, because people get turned down for loans all the time.
Correct.
This wasn't just getting turned down for a loan. Correct. You all were not the average couple applying for a loan. Tell them why you knew something else had to be going on here that made no sense in terms of what you knew the criteria was for extending loans to people. Why would you think it was discrimination? Because people are always, that's the first thing they always say, it was discrimination. No, you base that on information. And remember, y'all, this is an accountant we're talking to, okay? So they always want the numbers to line up. They want the information. This is not about opinion. All these ducks have to be in a row. Why would you have come to that as a conclusion?
Yes. And so, this occurred back around 1990, the 1990 timeframe. I started my PhD at FSU in 1990. Janice started her law degree at FSU in 1991. So this actually was fall of 1991. And I knew that my wife being in law school and me being in a PhD program, that we had really good job prospects coming out. We actually had assets at the time, and we had income at the time. One of the associate deans at the Florida State University actually said at the time that I was the highest paid graduate student he'd ever known back in 1990. And I had gotten a lot of scholarships to attend FSU's program. You know, a side note, I didn't have them the first year when I started in the fall of 1990. Then I saw that they were giving out scholarships if you had a high standardized test score. So I actually studied for the GMAT for 2 weeks, and my score went up 100 points. And then I got several other scholarships. And so back, if you just to put it in frame, this is back in 1991, and I was probably making $35,000 or $40,000 in scholarships, getting paid that a year to go to grad school. You know, which was a good amount of money to be a grad student. And then Janice had some money as well. So this was not an issue of whether we were qualified for the loan. We knew we were qualified for the loan. We knew we had good job prospects, but we had income and we had good credit. And so when we were turned down for the loan, I knew that something had gone wrong, that this was not a typical case where you looked at the data and you made a decision based on the data, because they're supposed to look at your income ratio, income and housing as a percentage of your income. And then your income is your housing as a percentage of your total assets. And I had already run these numbers. And so I knew our numbers were okay. And then when they said we turned you down for the loan, I'm like, wait a minute. I was dumbfounded, like you couldn't turn me down. I mean, I'd already run the numbers. And so we started exploring and asking what happened. And it turned out that the loan officer had sat on our loan for 2 weeks. So she didn't even process the loan initially, and loans that had come in after hours from other people, majority people, had been processed ahead of ours. So our loan got set off to the side and sat.
Hold on, let's make sure we have all the facts. So was it because there was something missing from your package and she couldn't move forward with it?
No.
It was just a plain old, it sat there for 2 weeks.
It sat there for 2 weeks. In fact, since I am an accountant, I had delivered all the information that she needed to process the loan application. Generally,
I know you did that. Exactly. That's the way you roll on a regular basis.
Yes. Yeah. So generally, when you apply for a loan, they have to give you a list of stuff that they need. I had given them everything that they needed. They had everything from day one. And so the loan officer just pushed our loan off to the side and was processing loans that came in after hours. It turned out in the lawsuit, the loans that came in after hours of the applications were from majority people. And so the loan officer, unfortunately, had made a decision about us based on our race, and it pushed our loan to the side, thinking we weren't going to get qualified or weren't going to be qualified, process loans after hours. And then again, our loan sat there for 2 weeks, and eventually it didn't get a full processing. They actually did some handwritten notes and calculations that were wrong, and then turned down our loan. So our loan never actually got. Yeah, the bank turned it down, but never did a full underwriting of the loan. And so, when we sued the bank, we were able to get some of this information to see exactly that they had not fully processed the loan and had processed other loans ahead of ours. And so, like I said, I mean, we eventually got the loan done by the next bank that we went to. So we were able to buy a townhouse and go through our graduate program. But that particular experience was an experience that I knew the dots weren't connecting in terms of what was going on and why the loan was being denied. And knowing that I had given them all the information, that our ratios were good, everything was good. So it didn't make any sense to me at the time. And it turned out it didn't make any sense after the fact, because they had not processed the loan correctly. And so
this was for somebody who was in a doctoral program with good prospects for permanent position later, and a lawyer who was in law school, already with assets, already with money
and income.
So we got you right now. It's not like we don't know where you're headed. Okay, you don't go through a doctoral program and go sit on your butt somewhere. Okay, you're going to have good prospects coming out. She's going to have good prospects as a lawyer, all of which, of course, eventually was exactly what happened. And even despite the fact that even if you had nothing else, you were in good standing right then, according to the criteria that they used to judge, you were not given that loan.
Correct. Exactly.
And the one thing you could see was that the people that they put in front of you were people who were not Black, and you all were Black.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's important for me to say those pieces, because we start off at A with these assumptions. I want people to be able to be with us when we get to Z by looking at the same information. Okay. And with all the questions that they usually ask, well, what about this? What about that? That's why we're trying to make sure that all those pieces are lined up for you. Okay. There was just nothing else in this picture except for race. And I have to say, and I know you feel the same way because we've worked together for so long on these issues, this is the last thing we ever want to conclude. We will take out everything else before that, answering those questions for ourselves, because that's not the conclusion we want to come to ourselves. It is not the first thing we jump to. We don't play race card.
And discrimination isn't always about race. There's many forms of discrimination. So the problem is when people automatically go to race, and we're always the ones saying, wait a minute, let me look, let me see if it's this and that, because we know what it means to go there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to be all invested when you go to that level because you're probably right. And they will try to tear you down so that you can act or feel as if you're not. I'm sorry that happened to you in the 90s, but what do you think about what's happening now in 2025 with Navy Federal Credit Union?
Right. I mean, we're still seeing cases where people are suing not only lenders over getting their loans turned down when they believe they were qualified. I mean, we just had a case here in Jacksonville. Ameris Bank had a settlement with the government over lending discrimination, and the current administration actually voided the settlement. So they actually let them off the hook without having to pay the settlement amount that they had agreed to pay under the previous administration. So, but again, I mean, we still see cases where people are bringing lawsuits over being turned down for loans when they believe they were qualified for loans, and litigating that and often getting settlements out of that. The other side of it is on the appraisals. We also see discrimination in the appraisal market. And my wife and I were actually victimized in the appraisal market as well. So we were victimized back in 91 on the lending side. We were victimized probably, this would have been 7 or 8 years ago, on the appraisal side here in Florida. So
explain to people what happens when your appraisal gets screwed up based on race. Okay. Because we think of, an appraiser goes in and looks at your house and decides how much it's worth. We're not even talking about the fact that you can't have any pictures of black folk up on the wall or black art or any kind of thing that shows who lives in that house. Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Just knowing that it's you alone can make a difference to an appraiser.
Correct.
Tell them what happened.
Yeah. And so in this case, my wife and I, we live in Amelia Island, which is a resort community in North Florida, about 35 miles north of Jacksonville. And we had purchased property back in 2000 because we knew we wanted to retire to this area. So we purchased property back in 2000. We had actually, there's 2 stories I can tell you about this property. I actually wasn't even thinking of one of the stories. So back in 2000, when we were buying the property, we had gotten a really good deal on the purchase price. The person who had owned the property before us had passed away, but he had not been at the property in 15 years. And he had quit claim deeded the property to his caretaker. He lived in New Jersey. The caretaker lived in New Jersey. And the caretaker did not come down to look at the property to see what kind of property she had inherited. And so we had contacted her and asked her, could we buy it from her? She wasn't planning on coming to Florida, so she agreed to sell it to us.
So when you think caretaker, is this somebody who just made sure taxes were paid or something like that?
No, the person who owned the property before us was sick and been sick for like 15 years.
Okay, like literally a caretaker.
Literally a caretaker.
Okay.
Right? And so when he passed away, he left the property to his caretaker. After 15 years of caring for him, that was probably a good thing for him to do. But again, she lived in New Jersey, was not going to come down, and didn't come down and look at the property. We reached out to her. She agreed to sell it. And the selling price was $120,000. And this is 2 lots that are 3 blocks off the beach in Amelia Island, Florida resort community. Now, when we had the property appraised for the purchase, and this was back in 2000, the property appraised at $157,000. And our loan, the contract price was $120,000. So you would say, okay, that's great. It's appraising for more than what you have it in a contract for. You're going to have instant equity when you buy it. Well, 3 days before we were supposed to close, the bank calls us and says the underwriter, and we were taking out a loan, says the underwriter is having trouble with your loan. And I said, what do you mean having trouble with the loan? Said the underwriter's having trouble because you have it under contract at $120,000 and the appraisal was picked by the bank. We didn't pick the appraiser. They picked the appraiser. The appraisal came back at 157 or 167. Can't remember, one of those two. And said the underwriter's having trouble because the contract. And I said, well, what's the issue? We got a good contract. The appraisal is a valid appraisal. You pick the appraiser. And so they said they kept saying the underwriter's having trouble with the loan. And I was like, we're supposed to close in 3 days. So what are you trying to tell me? Well, when I realized, and this is just my belief, that they were trying to not do the loan and going to try to give the property to someone else, because this is an area where there's a lot of interest in the property. And so this was, someone found out, and usually they would tell you, don't put your survey stakes up until right before you close, because other people will start calling about your property. And that is exactly what happened when the survey stakes went up. In fact, the attorney representing the seller up in New Jersey called us and said, what is going on down there? He said, we've gotten so many calls in 2 days about this property that you have under contract. He said, someone has offered us twice what you have it under contract for. Twice. We had it under contract at 120, and he said, we've got an offer of 240,000. And so they were trying to figure out a way to back out. And I think they had gotten to the lender and said, don't do this loan. And then, we can sell it to someone else. Well, this is, Don, where my having 6 brothers helped. Because, some of my brothers are doctors and lawyers, And so I actually called my brothers and said, I need $90,000 in 3 days. And my brothers were able to come through. And so in 3 days, I called the bank back and said, I don't even need your loan now. I'm going to do this loan with cash. I'm going to do this purchase with cash. You can decide what you want to do, whether you want to loan me money or not loan me money, but I don't even need your money now. I'm prepared to go and pay $120,000 cash for this loan, for this property. The next day, the bank came back and said, your loan is approved.
Mark,
But it was because I was able to get my brothers to help me. And we had come up with the $120,000 in cash in 3 days. So we didn't even need the loan.
And how many people are in a position to do that? How many people have
Not enough.
with doctors and lawyers who say, okay, we got you, bro.
Exactly.
And the thing is, as a lawyer, I'm sitting here listening to this and going, okay, why would the bank be calling them? What is the problem? I mean, legal problem, right? Because that's what you usually think will happen if the bank is calling you saying there's some problem with it. And it's like, I can't think of anything. To me, this looks good for the bank because they know they're going to get their money back because signing on the dotted line, you've already made money. Just like you said, you got equity going in.
Yeah. So
And they just wanted to be greedy,
right,
and take advantage of the situation.
And we think that we're trying to give the property to someone else, one of their clients or someone else. And so either, the attorney who was representing the seller, someone was trying to undercut the deal. And we never found out who. But, the bank in the end did the right thing. They did the loan. In fact, the attorney for the seller, actually, he tried to back out. And we said, well, you have a contract. We said, so if you back out, you won't see a dime of that extra money because we're going to come after you for voiding the contract. And we're going to get all that extra money. And so
the thing is, it's not like you had done anything wrong, okay? And that's an important piece to say to people. Right. This was a completely free and open transaction where the bank chose who they wanted to do the appraisal. It just so, and you didn't undercut or try to tell this owner, it really isn't worth a whole lot of money. So, but we're willing to give you 124. That's not what happened here.
Right.
Everything was right above board. Yes. And still, you ended up having to go through all these extra hoops. And I know you, Mark, you are very understated, but you're not going to let nobody take advantage of you.
Oh, no.
Okay, you ain't going to be cussing and fussing, but they're not going to take advantage of you. And you see what you did. Okay, y'all don't want to give us the money? Fine, I will pay cash for this mofo. Okay, and that will be the end of the deal. Bank you out of it altogether.
And that's where a lot of people don't have that to lean on, like you said. It doesn't happen for everybody that way, especially with us, because we're still trying to get our footing into some real long-term legacy money. Or
I can't imagine the person they were trying to sell it to was a person that was the same color as you. That would just be
I'm sure that was not the case. Again, they didn't show me a picture, but I'm pretty sure that was the case, that they were undercutting the deal to give it to someone else who didn't look like me. So that was the first story. But then, so that was in the year 2000 when we bought the property. And then when I came to UNF in 2015, we had bought a condo in Jacksonville, and most people hopefully know that, the biggest way to leave wealth to your family is really through real estate. And I mean, real estate does go up in value over time. So if you can get real estate and hold on to real estate, it does provide a great means of intergenerational wealth transfer by passing real estate. So we had bought a condo in Jacksonville when I became dean. It was about 5-10 minutes from the school. And we then decided we were going to renovate the house that we had bought in 2000. This house that, where this first incident happened with the bank trying to not give us the loan. And so we had renovated the house. It was a small house. We'd renovated it. We'd used it for 17 years. And then we said, well, we've got 2 lots. Let's build our dream retirement home. It was getting close to being time to retire. My wife, Janice, is now retired. And so we went to refinance the house, the small house. And we actually were trying to just pull cash out. And so we were refinancing the house. Now granted, we had bought the house the property for $120,000 in 2000. We had spent about $75,000 renovating the existing house that was on it. And we did that in 2001. So we had $200,000 invested in 2000 and 2001. So now you roll the clock forward to 2017, and we're going to use this house as equity, this property as equity. So we are going to get it appraised to use it as equity. So let me tell you, in 2017, they reappraised our house. Now, we live 2 blocks off the ocean. They reappraised this property, and the appraisal came back at $157,000.
Oh, come on. After, I knew you were going to say something crazy.
I didn't even that crazy.
And yours is depreciating, and you have a second lot? No, come on.
We have a second lot. We're 2 blocks off the ocean, and it's been 18 years later. And the appraisal comes back at less than what I think it was 167 the first time, and then it comes back 10,000 less 18 years later. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, this is so
Mark, I
crazy.
swear.
It was so crazy. I mean, I was like, this is so crazy. So, again, we were thinking, okay, someone thinks that we need money and that they are going to force us to have to sell this property because we obviously are trying to get money out of it. But we didn't really need the money. I mean, we were just pulling money out to use. I think we used the money actually to pay for the condo that we bought in Jacksonville. I think that's what we were pulling money out to pay cash for this condo. But someone clearly thought that we were in financial straits. And if they lowballed the appraisal, we would not be able to get the loan. And then we potentially would have to sell the house, sell the property. And so they gave us this really lowball appraisal at $157,000, which was crazy.
Did they have the paperwork? Did they know what the appraisal was before?
They would not have seen the appraisal from 17 years before, but they clearly saw the sales in the area and they knew what they actually appraised it at less than the tax assessment. They said it was less than the tax assessment.
No.
So, I mean,
it was like dumb stuff.
Right, exactly.
It was so obvious.
It was an obvious bad appraisal. But again, we were thinking, okay, they're trying to do something to help someone out. And they've got a client or someone that wants to buy some property at the beach, and they're trying to hopefully be able to feed this property to them. Well, we ended up getting the money that we needed in building our dream retirement home, which we have now. Beautiful house at the beach. And I would say, just to kind of tell you where the market is. So the 2 lots that we have, and we built a nice retirement home, but the property's now worth $3+ million. And we were having trouble getting a loan.
No, it's not. No, it's not worth any more than like 157.
157,000.
What can you do?
And I just got my latest tax assessment. They have these 2 lots assessed at $910,000, but this person was trying to say the lot was 157. I'm like, this is just craziness. Yeah.
And
So
they've been the one to choose that appraiser as well.
they chose that appraisal too. They chose the
How did they think you were? Did they know that she was a lawyer and you were in accounting?
Well,
this is just stupid stuff.
It is stupid stuff. But again, it makes you stop and think about how many people does this happen to every day where they don't know,
yes,
or they don't know who to go to or how to even fight something like this when it happens.
Yes.
I mean, that's what it made me think about is how many people lose their property or get taken advantage of in situations like this because they don't know, they don't have either the resources or the connections or the knowledge to know that this is just flat out wrong.
And people, again, and I keep going back to this because this is what we hear so much. People don't think this is real, which is why we have the podcast, right?
Right.
This situation that you're describing, especially the part about maybe they had somebody else lined up for it,
right.
That's precisely what they found out government agencies were doing with Native Americans and their properties, and Black folks, especially Black farmers and their properties. And eventually they admitted to it. This isn't me saying this. They admitted this in court documents that this is a lot of why it is that the vast majority, something like 97% of Black farmers lost their land.
Correct.
Because somebody else wanted to buy it. They knew that. So they would either up the taxes or lowball the appraisal so that the farmers would not be able to get whatever it was they needed, whether it was money for farm equipment or whatever, even the stuff that was given in government programs for them to have.
Correct.
Okay, it was precisely made for them. And then when they finally admitted to it and there was a settlement, along comes Trump's administration and says, the first one, why are y'all discriminating against these people? They're getting something. This is the settlement now for admitted discrimination. Why are these farmers getting something that we're not supposed to have? So y'all shouldn't have that. So they undid or did not fund the settlement, which is like the craziest thing. It's like, okay, well, if you were discriminating against, you get the settlement too. Right. But you weren't because you were a white farmer. And this was all done, whether you think you benefited or not, it was all done for your benefit. So that whoever wanted to buy that property that was white could get it, but the Black folk couldn't get it. It is the craziest thing. And for the Native Americans, they found out that they were totally undervaluing and saving for white investors the land rights for being able to go onto that property and extract the minerals that were there, that they may not have even realized were there when they entered into the agreements for these minimal sums of money. I mean, crazy sums of money, like $100. And you're thinking, okay, well, at least we're getting something for the property. And as it turns out, you're taking out hundreds of thousands, if not more, in the minerals that are there. This is craziness. So you know what they're doing to folks like you.
Correct. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, it is the data
have as much as you do in terms of the kind of resources that you can bring to bear to challenge what it is that they're doing.
Correct. And you're right. The data that show over 90% of Black farmers lost their land.
Oh, yeah.
Because of these shenanigans that were going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. It is not people's imagination. I had a good friend at UNF, as a matter of fact, who used to say, it ain't paranoia if it's real. And this was a white man. Okay. And he's right. It's not paranoia when it's real. Every time somebody says that they are, and this goes to your point, Renee, just because somebody says that there has been discrimination, you cannot just dismiss it and assume they're just being paranoid or they're playing the race card. By the time we say there's discrimination, we looked at this stuff 6 ways to Sunday to exclude everything else that it could possibly be before we say, oh, that's what's going on. That's what's happening.
Because we don't want it to be that either.
No.
You know, we really want it to be that I don't walk outside and look at my neighbor and go, were you the one? Was it you over there at that? You know, if I go to the bank I already bank at, well, walking in.
You have to live in.
You know, this is like, this goes beyond it. The trauma from all of this is something we don't want because we're still dealing with the trauma we already have.
Yes.
And now you're talking about adding to it, and we really don't want it to be that. But you know what? We have no evidence that it's never that. Everything always goes back to something that happened that you can go back and look at. Of course, you know, hindsight is always 20/20, but I'm sure people who were living at that moment knew it at the time too.
Yes.
But
many people decide they won't go forward with it. I mean, the vast majority of people do not challenge it. They just go ahead and move on and go to another bank, try to get another loan. It's because we're not even talking about the emotional, psychic toll it takes to understand that this is what is happening to you. And that's a lot of what you're talking about, Renee. And Mark, for you, it wasn't just you. You witnessed the same kind of thing happening with your parents.
Correct. That is true.
The same sort of thing with your parents.
It happened with my parents as well, because my parents actually bought a piece of property, 2 lots on the ocean, back in 1990 in the same community that I live in now. American Beach in Emiliana, Florida is a Black-owned. It was founded by the first Black millionaire, A.L. Lewis, but he bought a couple hundred acres and created a Black beach during segregation.
Yep.
And so, but my parents bought, 2 lots on the ocean, and when they tried to get a loan to build a house, they were told by a lender that we don't lend in that area. So they had essentially redlined this community and said, we don't lend in that area. And of course, redlining is illegal. But that's what happened to my parents. So, they ended up getting a loan from another lender. But, so I had to go to, when we first bought that property, we had to go to a second lender back in Tallahassee, but how many people give up? The first lender tells you no, and you think that you're not qualified. And so you stop trying to buy a house. So, I mean, I went to the second lender, my parents went to a second lender, and we got a loan, but how many people don't pursue because they're told by one lender that you're not qualified when you actually are qualified? I mean, so that, you talk about the trauma.
What ends up happening is that people go into this already thinking they don't deserve. We always feel like we're hat in hand, asking, can you please give me a loan? Give me some of my money. That's how we are always feeling about this anyway. So when they turn you down, you're like, I knew it. I knew I was going to get it.
Exactly.
And so there's your self-fulfilling prophecy, right? All the way through. And,
the piece of this that it is so important for people to understand, and we keep trying to fit these pieces together for people because they don't understand, because they keep getting sort of the tail end of something, so they don't understand why it is, for instance, that you would say this is discrimination. They don't understand this iceberg that's underneath it. Part of what you just said is such a tremendous piece. Your parents bought at American Beach because it was the Black area because of Jim Crow segregation. Correct. That was real from the end of the Civil War, essentially, until the 1964 Civil Rights Act. The country was engaged in Jim Crow, separate but equal. That was never even beginning to approach equal. Okay, separate but equal would have been bad enough, but it was never equal. You could not go to a public beach if you were Black. You couldn't go to the beach in Florida. Okay, the land of the sunshine, the land of the beaches, you couldn't go. So they bought land and created their own beach to be able to just go to the freaking beach.
Yes.
And still had problems. But that wasn't the end of it. And this is the real big bridge piece for people who keep saying, why are y'all still talking about this stuff? Do you think in 1964, when this stuff became illegal, that all those people who had for the entire history of the country known this way of life all of a sudden died and said, oh, okay, let's try to treat these people now with this new crop of people? No, I'm still here. And that was when I was alive. I'm still here and kicking. Yeah. These people did not die. their ways of life that had been there for generations did not die. Those bankers who are looking at those loans when you come in to make the loan and they are seeing your face have been given messages their entire lives about who you are, what your worth is. I don't care what your qualifications are. I don't care what the numbers say about what you can pay back.
Right.
You're Black. Mm-hmm. And we have those people in a certain place in our head. And it's not necessarily a conscious thought. And this is important for people to understand because they say, I'm not racist. I don't care whether you are or not. That's not the point. Right. The thing is, you do have ideas in your head that you have picked up without even realizing it about the value of all kinds of people, all kinds of things. There's a reason that you are not having snails for breakfast. It's because even if you've never had a conversation about it, you know enough to know that's not what we eat. Okay, don't even try offering it to me because it's not something I'm going to be interested in. You pick that up about everything, and especially groups of people. Mm-hmm. When you present, no matter what your qualifications were, no matter what Janice's were, no matter what your parents were, that allowed them to be able to qualify to buy that property. Okay, Black folk buying property was a huge thing. Mm-hmm. Nobody's thinking about what it took for you to get that or to be in that position. They just see the color. Mm-hmm. And that puts you in a certain category. And that means things follow from that. Things like whether you're trustworthy enough for you to be able to get a loan.
Right.
And you may be somebody like my dad, college degree. They looked at him and said, you want to buy this property, this house in Washington, D.C., Capitol Hill? And needed $400 to be able to get the everything he needed. He needed $400 more. And they looked at him and the idea that you wanted to buy, and it was a white neighborhood, Capitol Hill, because what Black person could afford, right? It was like, we'll give you the money. You sure you want to do this? And my dad, very mild-mannered. You remind me a lot of him. My dad was like, actually, I didn't come here for real estate advice. I came here for a loan. Can you give me $400 or not? How about we'll give it to you? But at a time when interest was maybe 3%, 2-3%. Dollar for dollar. 100% interest.
Wow.
100% interest. And this is a bank. This isn't some fly-by-night, risky situation. And my dad was not a risk. He had a government job, college degree. And I said to him later, and I didn't find this out until I was in law school, and I said, Diddy, why did you pay that back? That's usury. You don't have to pay that back. It's illegal. He said, I gave them my word. I told them to pay them back, so I paid it back dollar for dollar. That's what we call a Black tax. You just get raked over the coals and have to do more, be more, do whatever more, just because you're Black. And anybody that thinks that this would not have changed if you did not have, at some point, a consciousness of it, even though that consciousness was caused by Title VII or the Civil Rights Act in '64, it's just wrong. Because there was nothing that happened between the day before that law was passed and the day before it became effective that changed people's attitudes. Those same people were sitting at that bank, but now they were supposed to extend a loan to you. All that stuff did not disappear from their heads, and it still has not. And if we thought it did, we saw within the last few years, not so much. Because a lot of those things that we thought we had fought and done away with after that law passed in 1964, we are having those same battles today. This morning, I got an email from a student who is now out working, who wanted me to come and deal with her workplace in terms of sexual harassment. And I said, and when I explained to her, what I do and how it would be done, because she had taken my employment law course, and she said, Dr. B.A., we really need this. Okay, this is sexual harassment, and it is so ridiculous. And she said, once you explain like what would happen, she said, I don't even have the energy for it. And this is an Asian student. She said, I can't do that because, and I said, the saddest part of what you're saying to me is that we have been fighting this battle for the last at least 40 years, since at least the 80s. Okay, we've seen 2 Supreme Court judges taking over. We've seen the Me Too movement, and we're still fighting this battle. If that's the one for sexual harassment, you can imagine what happens when you have, in addition to what people are doing, a president who was elected after he was convicted of 34 counts of sexual improprieties, after he said, grab him by the pussy. What message do you think that gives to the guys out there in terms of what they think they can do in terms of sexual harassment? Put there for me to be able to do whatever I want to. I heard I could grab him by the pussy. You still wouldn't be able to say anything, right? These things have consequences. Attitudes of Black people, especially when they go on for generations, they have consequences. And what you experienced was not just for you, but for you and your parents, and then mine. That's a consequence of that attitude. That's a consequence of that mindset, those messages. So this is not just our imagination. This is real. And I tend to believe that the vast majority of American people don't like what they just heard happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
They want to think that when you go to the bank, if you're qualified to get a loan, you're going to get it. We need them to know, not always.
Not always.
And there are other things that are at play, and it's not our imagination. We're not asking by DEI. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
You need that in order to make people do what they're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if it can help make that more of a reality, why would you get rid of it? Why would you get rid of it and allow to continue what happened to you and just sort of bury your head in the sand and say, oh, well, that doesn't happen anymore? Yeah, it does.
That's why I wanted to make sure we mentioned the Naval Federal Credit Union, because I know when you talked earlier, Mark, you were given the dates, and I think people get a tendency to go, oh, that was then. That's nothing to do with now. It absolutely has to do with now. And you see, you're talking about people's ability to just live. So I have to make money in order to make sure I'm not on these services that you don't want anybody to have, even though my tax dollars goes to pay for those things should I need them. And then, you want to be able to have the trust, of course, of certain institutions, especially if you have a relationship with them.
Right.
And it just keeps snowballing, and until somebody stops. Separate is not equal. So the two words don't even go together, because if I take something from another, it can't ever make it equal. And diversity, if you didn't want a diverse society, you shouldn't have different types of people here. But you let them in. We're here. Everybody's here. You can't stop it. It's not going to stop being a diverse society. I get what you're trying to do, though, is make sure that even if we do have some wins in court, that we still don't get to enjoy the fruits of that, because we don't, I guess reparations, no. Winning lawsuits, no. Continued discrimination, yes. Yeah. So you have to tell me, where are we wanting to go with this? The end game, if the end game is to get rid of all people who have different backgrounds, cultures, and then you want all the people who are sick to die, and then you want all the people who are not adhering to the, I guess, the praise and worship of the new master. I don't know who's left.
Mm-hmm.
What you said is such an important piece, because we tend to think of diversity in terms of the kinds of stuff that usually is pinpointed. But if you think about, if you took everybody out of the country that was not white, right, you still got disabled people. You got people who are mentally thinking different ways than other people, right? You'd still have diversity. Diversity isn't just race or gender. You'd still have sexual orientation. You'd still have disabilities. You're not going to get whatever I don't even know what it is, this idea of a perfect society where everybody is white, male, straight, totally able-bodied, totally mentally thinking in one direction. Where does that exist on the earth? But the policy...
And women are eunuchs, because we need for you to do a Henry scale, right? We need
to shut up. Yeah. I mean, it's not realistic when you think about the end game of the kind of policies that we're seeing. And that, to me, is the scary part, and why the information is so important. It's one thing to not know. It's another thing to know and to allow it to go on. We are fighting. Yesterday, I was at my daughter's school. My daughter's a teacher, and teachers, I think, are so undervalued and underappreciated. And I have been for the past few weeks just baking things and taking them up to her school and putting them there for the teachers and the staff, right? Which they greatly appreciate. And yesterday I happened to take something up there, and I saw something I had not seen before, which is outside of my daughter's classroom. There's a picture of her and a little piece that says why. And then I guess it's a form, I guess, that it may be outside of every teacher's classroom. And it tells why you teach. And I stood there reading it, and I just started crying. It's like, this is a child I am so proud to know exist and came from me, because what she talked about was, we believe in the value and the worth of every single child that we teach. And we want to teach them to be in a world in which they are accepted for who they are. And at the end, that's all we're talking about. Mark, have we ever done anything where that has just not been our bottom line? That is the bottom line. I don't care what the program is. I don't care what the theme is. All we're talking about is being able to accept people for who they are, because we don't all look alike. We don't all sound alike. We don't all think alike. And what's wrong with that? If you're qualified for that bank loan, why in the world wouldn't you be able to get it? If your parents wanted to build a house at the beach that they've already been consigned to because of the rates, why wouldn't they be able to do it? If they can't afford to do it, who are you going to have building a house there? Okay, they can afford to do this. Not most Black people could not afford to do it, but they could. Why wouldn't you allow them to do that? How many ways can you think of, and this is what you were talking about, Renee, how many ways can you think of to humiliate us? Okay, we make all the money, we do what you want us to do, we get the degrees that you want us to have, we want to get this American dream that you say we should all be pursuing, home ownership, being participating members of society. And at every turn, we're told no in some way, shape, or form, even if it's the way you look at us as if we are a turd in a punch bowl. Okay, like we do not.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
That's pretty graphic.
The piece that you said, Mark, that is so disturbing is, and this is true for each one, literally, of us on this podcast. If this happens to us, what do you think is happening to everybody else that does not have degrees, does not have advanced degrees, does not have the greatest jobs and stuff? What's happened to them? And that's the vast majority of folk.
Yeah.
It's like that's what we're fighting for all of us to be looked at with dignity and respect and to feel valued. That's all we want. That just doesn't seem like too much to ask for. And I do not believe, I refuse to believe that it's more than most Americans, the vast majority of Americans, want to have happen. I just can't believe that.
And I agree with you. And you're right. My dad was a physician, so it was not like he had an educated degree, medical degree. My mom was a nurse, but they were told, we don't live. So the opportunities are denied to everyone. Unfortunately, some of us are in a position to challenge it, and often too many of us are not.
You know what?
Family is not one to be contended with, right? Because not only did you said your father was a doctor and your mom was a lawyer.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
And then all your brothers and you have become
right. Most of my
and there's a lot of you.
Lawyers, financial services, yes. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. There's I guess there's no way to fail in that family. You can't.
Well,
and that's good to know.
Mark, you passed it on, right?
Right. Yes.
But, and Mark is so. It is him to be the person that carries this on. And Mark, we have had meetings where we have sat there and talked about strategy, right? About some issue. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I would have given this crap up so long ago. And not Mark. Oh no, he is an accountant. He's thinking without accountant. Think about it. I'm a lawyer and I'm thinking with the legal stuff, right? Mark is an accountant. It's like, no, we got to do this and this and this. And I looked at this and it's just like, you looked at that? It's like, yeah, that's what you have to do. It is extraordinary. I have valued it so much over the years, just your willingness to dot those I's and cross those T's and not let it go. Because I would have given it up and walked away and gone to another bank at some point. Not you.
No,
not you. And we need you in that fight. It takes people like you doing that.
Oh, it does. Yeah, it does.
Absolutely.
If you have the knowledge and the ability, you need to stand up and fight. So yes, to make it better for the next person. Right.
You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, do you think that January 20th, that executive order made a difference? Have you seen that DEI is in a different place because of it?
It is. And I'll just speak to, my university, University of North Florida. Well, the state of Florida. The state has prohibited using any public money to support anything related to DEI. And they also have prohibited private money. So if someone donates private money to an institution in the state of Florida, it cannot be used for anything related to DEI. And so I definitely have seen a difference in the state of Florida. They've dismantled all the DEI offices, all the LGBTQ offices, all the support structures. And Don, you and I are both college professors. Students need support. All students need support. Because you have so many first generation students who are white, black, green, purple, whatever. They all need support. But you're dismantling these support structures that a lot of students need to be successful in college.
Yes, so we have never seen any program exclude anyone.
Right. Exactly.
Anyone. Okay. These have never been exclusive programs.
Every program we've ever done.
It's there for whoever needs it.
Correct. All open programs. Yeah. And so again, I definitely have seen the impact in the state of Florida in terms of the order and just it flowing down throughout the state of Florida and the impact it's having on students. Unfortunately, the negative impact is having on students because I'm at a school that has a lot of first generation students, and often they don't know what they don't know. And so these support structures make a tremendous difference for them, because it's a comfort place for them to go and ask questions where they may not be comfortable asking questions in all settings. And so when you take away the LGBTQ Resource Center or the diversity offices, you are taking away a lot of the support structure that these students need. But it's there for all students. Everything was always open. All programs open. All offices open. Helped all students. Yeah.
And if
Right. Just like you can always turn down a vaccination if you don't want one. I mean, that was always clear, but now we have to have more rules to say we have less rules. Okay.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
I think that they are going to end up, I don't have any doubt that they're going to end up with them catching in that net things that may have been unintended. For instance, the first generation students, right? Sure. The military students, except, of course, they'll make exceptions for something like that, right? Mm-hmm. But they don't realize all of that was programs that were created because we saw that there was a need for these students for extra assistance. And what you said about them not knowing what they don't know is so important.
Right.
Because they didn't have anybody to ask. It wasn't what was in their environment. Mm-hmm. And having an office where you can go, and I've talked to these students, go see other people who were first generations mm-hmm. that had questions like you did, but managed to get over those. Mm-hmm. It is amazing how much, I don't know, maybe people think academia is about just going in and looking in some books. What they don't realize is that it takes a lot to get to the point where you go in, first of all, and then feel like looking at those books will be beneficial to you, right? It's so much of it is an emotional kind of thing that if you don't get the kind of support that those offices provide, you are greatly lessening
those students' opportunity for success or chances for success.
That's why I stopped, because maybe that's your point.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Because that is a great way to do it, and to not only cut off public funds, but for instance, and I know you've done this too, Mark, mm-hmm. I've got a scholarship at the University of Georgia that is it's open to everybody, mm-hmm. but it's specifically geared for students who engage in some sort of bridge building activity, because I know there's so much that needs to be done. Right? And it's like, it can't all be done by the university. So if you see something that you think needs done, I'm willing to go ahead and help you out with that, right? Mm-hmm. Once you say private money, mm-hmm. then me and all the people who have contributed to that scholarship, all of a sudden that goes out the window. But who has it benefited? Two of my favorites were students who started the first generation organizations. I hadn't even thought about that. That hadn't even been on my radar screen. And it was like, one second, because they, set up dinner for me with the students that get it. And I'm like, you did what? Yeah. That's not what I was thinking about. I love it. And when they give stories about how much students benefit, and they remember what it was like for them, that's why they started the organization. And then they mm-hmm. see how it benefits the other students, which is precisely what they were trying to do, help other people who felt just like them. And I think, and you would want to stop that.
Right.
The only reason it's important to keep everybody kind of away from each other so that we don't actually get together and decide, wait a second, we're not doing this. We can make sure everybody is separated apart. Divide and conquer, right? Divide and conquer is real. Somebody yesterday, did you see what happened recently? They took all that money away from the Hispanic serving institution, and they gave that great big chunk of money to the HBCUs.
Yes.
And one of my Hispanic students, it was like, okay, this is divide and conquer. It was like, I can't think of a better way you could have done it.
Right. And we're telling you, we're the ones that get the gain, and we're telling you they're trying to divide us. If we tell you that, I wish somebody would start listening to Black people when we talk the first time. Why must we wait until people are hanging from trees for you to get it? This is something we need for everybody to be on the board with. Work together. Try to not hear all these things about someone looks like this, or transvestites or transsexuals. Excuse me, myself together. Transsexuals are the ones that are the problem in the world. That's what's holding us back in the Olympics, high school football fields. All of that is what we need to be targeted at, not the shooters in schools, not the people who are, committing illegal acts with white collars. We don't need to worry about all those. Just the people who are trans are the ones that are the cause of everything.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that crazy? It's just insane.
Yeah.
It's just insane.
Yeah. But as you say, Don, we meet students all the time who, because they're first generation, are afraid to ask questions often, and they're in an environment where it's a bewildering environment when you get on a college campus. And so, I had the benefit of my father and my mother had gone to college, so it was easy. I had brothers who had gone to college ahead of me. But when I often think of the first generation students, it's a scary environment. And so, I mean, those resources or just the ability to be comfortable asking someone questions where they're not going to question you about for asking that question.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes a huge difference in their academic experience and their willingness to seek additional help. Which
and it can shut them down and make them have not only a totally different academic experience, but also leave prematurely for something we could have done something about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like you're asking for some extraordinary help. It's just if you don't feel comfortable in that situation, and we're not even talking about who's wearing what, who's in what sorority or fraternity, who looks like they have money, who doesn't look like they have money, all of which is a part of the equation, right? We're just talking about the fact that you don't have parents who went to school, and many people in your community did not. There was nobody you can ask. I can't tell you, and I know that this has happened with you, Mark, too, how many people that has happened to. And you put it together with coming from a small town, which is what you have at a lot of these institutions. These kids are barely making it just to get to class and sit there trying to act like they're not looking stupid.
Yes.
Knowing that there's a place of comfort they can come with people that don't look that have the same experience as them, why would you want to take that away? I can't think of a good reason why you would want to take it away. If you can tell me a good reason, I can't think of a good.
Going to school is hard enough. Being away from parents, family, and all that, it's hard enough. And that's for someone who has everything going, that we would consider having all the right things happen. So that pressure applied with all the other pressures of just trying to fit in with, your clothing, and if you don't have enough money to sustain that, having to get a job too, where some of your classmates aren't working, but you have to. Those are all things that go into the psyche of a student, right?
Yeah. And we're not talking about coddling people, holding their hands, trying to make it so they don't really deal with the real world. No, not that at all. Nobody's trying to coddle anybody. We're just trying to make sure that we give you the benefit of what we now know can be problematic. Before, we just didn't even realize it like we do now. But that's what growth is about. You learn and you grow and you act accordingly. Now that we know that's an issue, we got you. Except we can't anymore.
And Renee, your point about students working, I mean, at my institution, probably between over 60% of our students work, and they often are working 30, 35 hours a week. It's essentially a full-time job and trying to go to school full-time. It's often because they're helping out their families. They're trying to give money to their families to help their family out. So they don't want to be a burden on the family when they go to school. So they're getting jobs, and then they're trying to, help give money back to the family. I mean, it's a challenging scenario for a lot of students.
And I guess maybe you're also realizing that a lot of students have children now, they have families, like you said, not just their parents and siblings. Now their children are in school, so they're there with them while they go to school. And being able to pursue your college dreams dreams, is already hard enough. But when the whole family is involved, that's even more difficult. And should you be one that just got to go to college, period, you don't want this to be the end. You don't want this, get drummed out on a technicality, right? Just need to work.
Yes,
it's a lot more than when I was going to school, and I did it with the kids and 2 part-time jobs at the same time. So I do think that even it's harder now.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Mark, you saw the difference, and I did too, because I taught at UNF between a level 1, right, top of the line state institution versus one where when I was at UGA or UNF, it wasn't even a 4-year yet. It was just a 2-year top tier.
Yeah, right.
No dorms, no nothing like that. Vast majority of students work. And for you to just come in and wipe this out for everyone when the needs are so different at the different institutions and not make any provisions where if you are a institution that's serving mainly working students, then these sorts of things we will be able to allow. If you're not, then we got a problem with it. But I mean, you have a much greater need, but no means under these policies of being able to address that.
Correct. Yes. And you're right. I mean, for better or worse, I mean, UGA, when I went to University of Florida, they're the flagship schools of the state. I mean, most of the students there are not working their way through school. Their parents are
not married.
Exactly. The parents are just writing a check. The kid's job is to go to school versus coming to a UNF or another regional R2 type school where, like I say, often they're working to be able to go to school and to help support their family. And just, the challenges are just totally different, different experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we're not saying you got to have daycare because Renee got some kids that she's dragging along trying to get this education. That's not what's going on here at all. It's just that if we think about the capitalist system, it deals with what the needs are. That's where your stuff comes from. Well, there was stuff like deodorant, which they just sort of created because they said that might make money if we tell people they stink, right? But people didn't seem to have a problem with it, right? But where you see a need, you usually will address it. Not so with these. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. You have a need and you're taking it away.
Yes.
Well, Mark, this has been extraordinary. Your experience, I knew it was rich, but oh my God, Renee, were we really ready for this?
I'm telling you, the conversation is amazing because it's not even that it has no expiration date.
Right.
And we would love for it to be like, this is what happened and this isn't going on anymore. Unfortunately, it's just as relevant today as it ever was.
Exactly.
And in fact, giving the messages that are coming out from the administration, maybe more so.
Maybe more, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have enjoyed it immensely. So I appreciate the invitation. I appreciate the opportunity to spend this time with you. I hope the podcast viewers and that they actually get some benefit of it. I think they will if they
I'm sure.
Open heart and open mind. Yeah.
How could they not? Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
Yes.
Thank you for everything. Oh, wait, I have 3 more questions. Wait, what's your favorite color?
My favorite color is probably red.
Okay, I was hoping you were going to say green. I thought that might be us, but okay.
My office is actually green, as you can see. So that would be my second favorite. So this light green pail that you see behind me, that's probably my second favorite color.
Yeah, then money. All right. And then what about your favorite movie?
My favorite movie is Shawshank Redemption.
My mom's favorite.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of lessons in that movie. Yes. A lot of good lessons in that movie.
Did you find yourself watching it every time it comes on? I don't care when I watch it. It doesn't matter if it's in the middle. I just watch it all the time.
I love it. When I see it on the TV, I always watch it. Yes. No matter how many times I've seen it, I'm going to watch it again.
Well, I guess I know what goes on my list, my watch list.
Oh, you've never?
Wait, I've seen it. But I guess it's time to revisit it.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And then if you could go anywhere in the world, would you go?
Oh, that's a funny one for you. Mr. has been everywhere in the world.
Well,
we're just talking about his 3 lined up ski trips, right?
And I would say that's what I would do. I mean, if I were picking something to do, it would be picking a ski trip somewhere. And my favorite place is Utah, skiing in Utah, which obviously we've had some tragic events in Utah, but there's 6 ski resorts there that are wonderful ski resorts. And so I like skiing in Utah. They say the greatest snow on earth at my favorite place, Alta. And I do agree, the greatest snow on earth. So, yeah.
I thought there was going to be that place is in, where is it? In another country. The Alps? Was it the Alps? Where do they have a big skiing place?
They do. And I just was in the Alps. I was actually in the Alps back in June. And there was snow on the ground.
Don't you love it?
It's
beautiful.
It was beautiful, but where I go in Utah, it gets probably 4 or 5 times more snow than the Alps. Yes.
Did you take the look up? Did you see the Matterhorn?
I saw them. I have a picture.
Oh my God, I die every time I see it. It's just so beautiful. It's so majestic.
It's stunningly beautiful. So yes, we were there in the snow on the ground and everything. But yes,
awesome.
It is, yeah, beautiful place.
It's so funny to think of you living in Florida and your favorite is skiing. I mean, I am sure we had to borrow clothes to go there, right? Because we don't live in that kind of climate in Georgia. With you, I'm sure you have a whole winter wardrobe.
I do. I have a whole lot of stuff for skiing. Yes, I do. Right.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you for everything.
Right.
Said hello, and I'm sitting out their way.
I'll tell the energy. Everyone hello.